"Good morning, ma'am. Your boarding pass, please." I handed it over, steady and polite. My heart was calm, but I caught the way the flight attendant's eyes flickered over the ticket, then over my face, then back again. A pause too long. First, "Class?" she asked, lips tightening. "Yes," I said evenly. She forced a smile, handed the ticket back, and waved me through. I walked down the jet bridge, heels clicking against the metal floor. I had earned this moment, the long hours, the endless meetings, the sacrifices no one ever saw. Yet the closer I got to my seat, the more I felt those familiar stares. Curious, doubtful, scanning me up and down like I had walked through the wrong door. I found my seat, 2A, and placed my bag in the overhead bin. I settled in, straightened my jacket, and exhaled. It didn't last long. "Excuse me," a sharp voice cut through. The same attendant now stood in front of me, eyes narrowed. "Ma'am, are you sure this is your seat? First class isn't, well, it's not for everyone." My jaw tightened. I kept my voice calm. "I paid for this seat. Do you need to see my ticket again?" She blinked, as though she hadn't expected me to answer so directly. "It's just sometimes passengers wander up here by mistake. It happens all the time." "No mistake," I said, sliding the ticket toward her again. She took it, glanced at it quickly, and handed it back with a stiff nod. "Fine, just making sure." I felt eyes on me, passengers pretending not to watch, yet leaning closer, listening. Their silence felt heavier than words. "Is there a problem?" An older man seated across the aisle spoke up, his voice firm but kind. His white hair and steady gaze carried weight. "She showed you already. Leave her alone." The attendant's lips tightened. "I'm only doing my job, sir." "No," he said pointedly. "You're doing something else." I looked at him, grateful for the interruption, but I stayed quiet. I had fought too many battles to know when silence spoke louder. The attendant straightened her posture, forced another smile, and turned back to me. "Well, enjoy your flight." I nodded once. "I intend to." She lingered a second longer, her eyes cold, before she finally moved down the aisle. My fingers tightened on the armrest. The taste in my mouth was bitter, familiar. I'd lived through enough of these moments to know what lay underneath her words. Not curiosity, not professionalism. Something deeper, something sharper. Whispers floated in from behind me. "Why would she question her like that?" one voice murmured. "Probably thought she couldn't afford it," another whispered back. I closed my eyes, inhaled slowly. I had learned to carry these moments like hidden stones in my pocket, heavy but not visible. The older man across the aisle leaned slightly toward me. "Don't let her ruin it," he said quietly. "People show themselves faster than they think." I gave him a small nod. "I'm used to it." "You shouldn't have to be." His words hit me harder than I expected. I had armor for insults, but kindness sometimes slipped through the cracks. The attendant passed by again, her steps deliberately slow, her eyes landing on me for just a moment too long. Her lips barely moved as she muttered, "People lie. I'll be watching you." The air froze in my lungs. She didn't say it loudly, but she wanted me to hear. She wanted me to know my presence here was under suspicion, under surveillance, like I had smuggled myself into a seat I couldn't possibly deserve. I sat straighter, forcing my breathing into rhythm. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. The old man's eyes caught mine again, steady, knowing. He didn't speak this time. He didn't need to. I whispered under my breath only to myself. "I paid for this seat, and I'll sit here as long as it takes." But inside, I knew this flight was already carrying more than I had bargained for. The scent of warm bread drifted through the cabin, followed by the clinking of silverware on porcelain. I watched the trays roll out, each one laid gently before, Passengers like a ceremony. Steak glistening, salads arranged, wine poured with care. When the cart reached me, the attendant didn't even glance my way. She slid a small plastic tray onto my table, foil still wrinkled, food already cold, bread roll cracked and dry. No china, no polished cutlery, just a cafeteria plate in a row of crystal and glass. I stared at it for a moment. My chest tightened, but I steadied my breath. "This isn't what I ordered," I said calmly. Her smirk was sharp enough to cut. "It's good enough. Some people aren't used to this kind of food anyway." The words lodged in my throat like ash. My hand clenched under the table. I wanted to shout, but instead I looked her dead in the eyes. "Bring me what I ordered." She leaned closer, her voice low but venom clear. "That's all we have for you." "For me?" I repeated slowly. Her smile widened. "Yes, for you." A man 2 seats down set his fork down, his voice carrying over. "Wait, she paid the same as us. Why is her plate different?" The attendant turned sharply toward him. "Sir, please enjoy your meal. Don't involve yourself in—" He cut her off. "Injustice? That's what this is. Don't pretend we don't see it." Murmurs rose from nearby passengers. A woman whispered, "Why didn't she get glassware?" Another muttered, "That's not right." My pulse hammered, but I forced my voice to stay even. "It's not the food. It's the way you're serving it." Her eyes narrowed. "You're making a scene over nothing." "Nothing," I said, my tone sharp but controlled. "Everyone here sees it's something." A younger passenger leaned forward. "She's right. This isn't equal." The attendant's jaw tightened. She snatched up my tray as though it had burned her. "Fine. I'll see what I can do." Her heels snapped against the floor as she stormed off. Silence lingered. Dozens of eyes pressed against me, some with sympathy, some with discomfort. I felt their gazes like heat on my skin. I folded my hands in my lap. "Stay composed. Don't let them break you here." The man across the aisle leaned toward me. "Don't let her push you down. You spoke the truth. I respect that." I gave him a small nod. My throat felt dry, but his words steadied me. When the attendant returned, she placed a proper tray down with a forced smile, voice dripping false sweetness. "Here you are, ma'am, just a misunderstanding." "No," I said softly. "It wasn't." Her smile faltered. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. She simply turned and walked away. The food sat in front of me, perfect and untouched. I didn't lift the fork. The taste I felt in my mouth had nothing to do with hunger. The tray sat in front of me, untouched. Perfectly plated food, polished silver, yet it tasted rotten before it even touched my lips. I could still hear her words in my head, still feel the sting of her smirk. From a few rows ahead, laughter floated back, soft, hushed, deliberate. I knew who it belonged to. My fingers curled against the armrest. Every chuckle was a reminder. "You don't belong here. You never will." I kept my eyes on the untouched plate. My hunger was gone, replaced by something heavier. "Excuse me," a voice whispered at my side. I turned, and one of the younger attendants leaned closer, her movements quick, nervous. Her eyes darted toward the others before settling on me. "They do this sometimes," she whispered. "Not just to you." My chest tightened. I searched her face, waiting for some hint of apology that went deeper than words. "And you stay quiet?" Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "If I speak, I lose my job." I held her gaze. "And if I stay quiet?" Her eyes flickered with something. Shame. Fear. Maybe both. "If you speak, you'll change everything." The weight of her words sank deep. I wanted to tell her I was tired of always being the one who had to speak, the one who had to bleed, just to prove the cut existed. But I only asked, How long have you watched them do this? Her lips trembled. Too long. I leaned back in my seat, my breath slow, steady. Too long. 2 words, heavy enough to bury every excuse she wanted. To offer. You know it's wrong, I said quietly. I do. Her voice broke on the words. But I can't. Yes, I cut in. You can. You choose not to. Her shoulders slumped. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Finally, she whispered, I'm sorry. Don't tell me, I said, my tone sharper than I intended. Tell yourself. You're the one who has to live with your silence. Her face flushed red. She glanced around once more, then pulled back, retreating as if she had already said too much. I stared after her, my chest heavy. I wanted to scream, to slam the tray into the aisle, to demand the whole cabin look at me and see the truth for what it was. But instead, I sat still. Because silence, even mine, spoke louder here. The laughter had stopped now. I didn't know if they'd noticed the whispers or if they simply grew bored of their cruelty. Either way, the quiet pressed against me until I could hardly breathe. I whispered into it, almost too soft to hear. This isn't just about me, and for the first time since I sat down, I believed it. The air was heavy with something unspoken, pressing against my skin more than the stiff fabric of the seat ever could. I had grown used to silence being the weapon, but this time, it cracked. Excuse me. A voice cut through, sharp and deliberate. A woman across the aisle leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the attendant. You wouldn't treat a white man in a suit like this. The cabin stirred. The kind of collective intake of breath people try to hide but can't. The attendant froze, then plastered on a brittle smile. Don't play the race card, she's just upset. My chest burned, but my voice came out even, measured. Upset? No, I'm observant. Everyone here sees the difference. Whispers rippled down the aisle. I caught fragments. She's right. I saw what they gave her. Not fair. The woman across from me straightened, her tone rising. We all paid for the same service, yet she's singled out? Why? The attendant's smile thinned. She received what was available. Nothing more, nothing less. Lies, someone muttered from 2 rows back. I felt every eye flicker between us, the tray still sitting in front of me like evidence in a trial, the attendant standing stiff like a defendant caught unprepared. You handed me a plate no one else received, I said, my words deliberate, each one a gavel strike. Cold food, messy. You looked me in the eye and told me it was good enough. Her jaw tightened. You're twisting it. No, the woman across from me snapped. We all saw you, another passenger chimed in. I did too. I thought maybe it was a mistake, but now... The murmurs rose, circling the cabin like a tide I could feel swelling behind me. The attendant's voice cracked under the weight of it. Everyone's exaggerating. She's telling the truth, the woman cut in, fire in her voice. And you're caught. My fingers brushed the edge of the tray, steadying myself. My heart thudded, but I forced calm into my words. This isn't about food. It's about the way you served it, the way you looked at me as though I didn't belong here. A hush fell, the kind that makes every sound sharper, every breath louder. Someone whispered, She said it. I felt the entire cabin's attention on me, pressing, waiting, measuring. I lifted my chin, refusing to shrink. I do belong here, I said, my voice carrying farther than I expected. And you all saw how quickly she decided I didn't. The silence boiled, thicker than before. But this time, it wasn't crushing me. It was holding her. The attendant opened her mouth, then closed it again. No words came. Every eye was on me now, and for the first time since I stepped onto the plane, the balance shifted. The murmurs hadn't died down when a shadow fell over me. The head purser stepped closer, his voice low but cutting enough to slice through the air. Perhaps, he said, his smile tight. First class isn't the right fit for everyone. It demands a certain class. A shiver crept up my spine. I'd heard words like that before, dressed in velvet, sharpened underneath. My throat tightened, but I forced my voice steady. Class, I said, my eyes locked on his, has nothing to do with color. And your words just proved that. A soft gasp floated from somewhere behind me, then a whisper. She's right. That was cruel. He ignored it, leaning in closer. You misunderstand. Standards exist here. Not everyone can meet them. The flight attendant who had served me earlier smirked from his shoulder like a child emboldened by a parent's presence. My stomach twisted. Standards, I repeated slowly, my fingers pressing against my knees to keep from shaking. You mean silence? You mean people like me swallowing treatment like this and pretending it's normal? He chuckled under his breath, shaking his head. You're making it about race. That's the easy way out. My heart pounded, the familiar blade of dismissal driving deep. No, I'm making it about truth. The easy way out is pretending you don't see what you're doing. A passenger shifted, his voice low but audible. She's not wrong. We all saw. The purser's eyes darted to the cabin, then back to me. His tone hardened. This is disruptive. You're upsetting other passengers. Upset? I asked, my voice quieter now but sharper for it. No. What upsets them is watching injustice play out 2 feet from their seats. The smirk on the attendant's face flickered, but the purser pressed on. You people always think everything is about... He stopped short, but the words hung there, unfinished, yet fully spoken. My chest went cold. The silence that followed wasn't mine this time. It was the cabin's, heavy, stunned, condemning. I swallowed the storm rising in me, forced myself not to explode. Finish it, I said softly. My voice shook, but not with weakness, with the weight of restraint. Say what you wanted to say. His lips pressed thin. He didn't answer. The woman from before leaned into the aisle. We all heard enough. You don't need to finish it. A man across the row muttered, disgraceful. The purser straightened, his authority faltering under the passenger's eyes. This conversation is over, he snapped. Focus on enjoying your flight. I let the silence stretch, let him squirm in it. My hands trembled against the armrests, but my face stayed calm. It's not over, I said finally. My voice was low, but it carried. Not here, not after we land. You just don't realize yet how many people are watching. The attendant's smirk vanished completely. The purser's jaw tightened, but he turned away, retreating up the aisle with the other one trailing close behind. The cabin buzzed, whispers colliding in the air. I caught fragments again. Out of line. She handled it better than I would. Unbelievable. Inside, my body was still trembling, but not with fear, with control. I hadn't given them the outburst they wanted, the performance they expected. I had given them silence sharpened into steel. I sat back, the untouched tray still in front of me, my reflection trembling faintly in the silver cutlery. They wanted me small, contained, forgettable. Instead, every word had etched me into the memory of that cabin. And I wasn't done yet. The cabin felt tighter with every passing minute. No one looked at me directly, not the crew, not the captain who still hadn't shown his face. Only the hum of the engines filled the air. I kept my eyes forward, jaw tight. Silence can cut sharper than any insult, especially when it's deliberate. The young attendant passed by with a tray. Her hand trembled as she reached for an empty cup, her eyes darting toward me, then away. I felt the weight of everything unspoken pressing against my chest. From the seat beside me, the older gentleman leaned just slightly. His voice was low, roughened with age, but steady. Don't let them sweep this under the rug. I turned my head, his gaze meeting mine. Those eyes carried history, eyes that had seen injustice before, eyes that knew exactly what silence could do. I whispered back, my throat dry. I won't. Words matter more than they think. He gave a small nod, like we had signed an invisible contract between us. His hand rested on the armrest, close enough to feel like a shield. The plane jolted as we began descent. My stomach tightened, not from the landing, but from the thought of stepping off and letting all of this dissolve into thin air. That's how these things always went, smothered by polite denial, buried under the comfort of, let's move on. The young attendant came by again, slower this time. She leaned down as if fixing something on my tray. Her whisper barely reached me. Please don't let this die here. Her voice cracked on the last word. I looked at her properly now. Young, barely into her 20s, face flushed with something between fear and courage. I murmured back, low, enough only she could hear. I don't plan to. Her hand brushed a napkin onto my lap, casual, like part of service. But when I opened it under the shadow of my hand, I saw the tiny scrawl of her name. Just a first name, rushed, almost shaky. Proof that I hadn't imagined her humanity. Proof that someone inside this uniform saw me as more than a disruption. Folded it carefully, slipping it into my pocket like a lifeline. The older man glanced over, his lips curving into the faintest smile. She's braver than most. I gave the smallest nod. Bravery doesn't always shout. The silence stretched again, thicker than the recycled air we were breathing. I could feel the crew avoiding me, eyes fixed on anything else, their steps quicker when they passed my row. Each second dragged like a stone being pulled across glass. The intercom crackled with the captain's voice, polished and professional. No mention of what happened, no acknowledgement, just weather, arrival time, thank you for choosing this airline. His words fell hollow, like paper burning before it catches flame. The older man leaned back, whispering almost to himself, but loud enough for me to catch. They'll try to erase this. I clenched my fists. They can try, but silence doesn't erase truth. It only delays the echo. He turned his head toward me, studying my face. His eyes softened, and for a moment, I felt like a child again, like someone older and wiser had just reminded me that strength sometimes lies in restraint, not fire. The wheels screeched against the runway, and the whole cabin jolted. Gasps filled the air. Then quiet fell again. I pressed my palm against my thigh, steadying myself. We rolled to a stop. The seatbelt sign blinked off. Passengers rushed to grab their bags, the usual frenzy of impatience. But around me, it felt like people moved differently, quicker, quieter, almost guilty, like they didn't want to brush against me, as if my presence burned. I stayed seated. I didn't move, didn't flinch. My silence was no longer theirs. It was mine now, sharpened into something unbreakable. The older man stayed with me, his bag untouched above him. Sometimes, he said softly, the storm isn't in the shouting. It's in the waiting. I met his gaze and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Then let them feel the weight of this quiet. The young attendant passed. Once more, head bowed, but her hand lingered just briefly on the back of my seat. It was enough. When the aisle cleared, I rose. My body felt heavier than it should, but my resolve was solid. Silence had filled this cabin like smoke, choking, pressing, trying to make me disappear. But I wasn't disappearing. Not now, not ever. The jet bridge smelled like metal and stale air. My heels tapped against the floor as I stepped forward, the hush behind me louder than footsteps should ever be. Every breath I took carried the weight of what they had done, and of what they didn't yet know. At the end of the bridge, a man in a crisp suit waited, posture rigid, smile forced. He stepped toward me. "Ma'am, may we escort you to the lounge?" His. Voice was practiced, polite, but his eyes flicked nervously toward the crew clustering behind me. They hovered like vultures, waiting for me to be removed quietly, their sins erased before anyone could speak of them again. I turned. I let the silence drag, the seconds stretch long enough to make them squirm. Then I spoke. You should be careful how you serve your passengers. I let my eyes lock with each of theirs, one by one. Especially when they own the airline. Gasps rippled through the passengers still crowded behind us. Whispers spread like fire on dry grass. The head purser's jaw tightened. His voice came, out sharper than he intended. That's absurd. You're making wild claims now. I tilted my head, steady, calm. Am I? Check the shareholder registry. My name is at the top. The young attendant who had slipped me her name earlier covered her mouth with her hand, eyes wide, disbelief and something like relief flooding her face. The older passenger ally let out a low chuckle, rough but satisfied. Well, I'll be damned, the defensive attendant, the one who had first dismissed me, snapped. You're lying. You're just trying to humiliate us. Her words wavered, not nearly as sharp as she wanted them to be. Fear had started to crack her mask. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Humiliation comes from behavior, not exposure. I simply reflected back what you gave me. The rep swallowed, his composure faltering. Miss... He paused, flustered. Or should I say Madam Chair? My lips curved, the smallest acknowledgement. You may. The aisle behind me fell silent. The shuffling of bags stopped. The whispers died out. I could feel dozens of eyes pressing against me, their shock almost tangible. The head purser spoke again, this time softer but laced with desperation. Surely there's been a misunderstanding. First class can be demanding. Tensions high, expectations perhaps I cut him off. Class has nothing to do with cruelty. Expectations don't excuse contempt. And as for misunderstandings, I let the pause stretch, tasting the weight of the moment. The only mistake here was assuming my silence meant consent. The defensive attendant's face drained of color. She stammered. We didn't mean it wasn't personal. I let out a soft, humorless laugh. When you serve poison, it doesn't matter if you meant it for everyone or just one. The damage is still done. The rep cleared his throat, fumbling for control. Madam Chair, if you'd allow me, I'll personally escort you to the lounge and arrange for a full debriefing. Immediate action will be taken. I didn't move. Instead, I turned slightly, my gaze sweeping the attendants. You wanted me out of sight. Escorted away. Forgotten. Tell me. I let my eyes linger on the purser. How does it feel to be seen? No one answered. A woman's whisper came from behind me, trembling but audible. She's right. We all saw it. Another voice joined, firmer. Every word, every look, we saw. The murmurs spread again, but now they weren't whispers of doubt. They were confessions, support, testimony. The air shifted. I felt it, power moving, tilting. The purser tried once more, but his voice cracked under the strain. We serve thousands of passengers. Sometimes fatigue, sometimes stress. I shook my head. Sometimes prejudice. Let's not dress it in softer clothes. Silence fell again, but this time it wasn't the silence of suppression. It was the silence of recognition, of truth that could no longer be buried. I stepped forward toward the rep. My voice was calm, but every syllable cut clean. You'll arrange a debriefing? Yes, but not before these people walk away knowing exactly what happened here. The rep nodded quickly, almost bowing. Of course. I turned back once more. My eyes caught the young attendant's. She gave the faintest nod, clutching the edge of her uniform like a lifeline. The older passenger held my gaze steady, his quiet pride saying more than words. Then I faced the crew. You thought you were serving just another passenger. Instead, you revealed who you are. And now, everyone here knows too. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence that followed was heavier than the flight itself. And for the first time since I boarded, I felt the balance shift. The jet bridge still hummed with the aftershock of my words. Their silence wasn't respect. It was fear, exposed and raw. I tasted it in the air. The rep shifted beside me, voice low but urgent. Madam Chair, if you'll allow us to handle this privately, I raised my hand, stopping him. No. Accountability doesn't happen in the dark. It happens here in the light, where everyone saw the harm. A murmur rippled through the passengers, agreement whispered like a prayer. The purser finally found his voice, though it cracked under the weight of the eyes on him. We didn't mean it like that. I turned slowly, my words measured, deliberate. You meant every word. That's why you said it. His face stiffened. He tried again, scrambling for softer ground. It was stress, long hours. Sometimes we speak without thinking. I stepped closer, letting my voice slice through his excuses. Your tongue speaks what your heart believes. Fatigue doesn't invent contempt. It only loosens it. Gasps from behind me. Someone whispered, That's the truth. The younger attendant, the one who had smirked earlier, suddenly burst forward, voice cracking with panic. Please don't ruin us, please. I can't lose my job over this. I felt the sting of her plea, but I didn't let it shake me. My reply was calm, colder than any raised voice could have been. You ruined yourselves. Today, the airline learns from you. Tears welled in her eyes. She looked to the passengers, searching for sympathy. None came. The purser clenched his fists, desperation curdling into anger. You're making an example out of us. I held his gaze. Yes, because examples matter, and you chose yourselves the moment you mocked me instead of serving me. He flinched. The words struck harder than a slap. The rep swallowed, glancing between us. Shall I proceed with their removal? I nodded once, but I didn't step back. I wanted my words to be the last thing they carried out of this space. You wanted to teach me my place. I let the silence hang, thick enough to suffocate. Now you'll learn yours. Outside this airline. The younger attendant sobbed openly now, her voice pleading. Please, I can change. Please give me another chance. I remembered the taste of spoiled food forced before me, the smirk, the whispers, the insult dressed as class. My stomach twisted again, but I spoke without tremor. Second chances are earned with humility. You spent your chance on cruelty. Passengers shifted, some nodding, some murmuring softly. The older passenger who had defended me earlier finally spoke, his voice carrying, She's right. Enough is enough. The purser tried one final time, his voice low, broken. I've given 20 years to this job. I met his stare, unflinching. And in one flight, you showed the world what those years were worth. Silence thundered in the jet bridge, the rep signaled. Two uniformed staff from the terminal approached quietly, their presence a final punctuation. The purser and attendant stiffened, realizing there was no escape left in words. As they were escorted past me, I didn't move. I let them feel the weight of walking by the passenger they had tried to humiliate. The passenger who now stood taller than every excuse they clung to. The younger attendant's eyes avoided mine. The purser tried to hold his head high, but his trembling betrayed him. When the last of them disappeared down the corridor, a quiet sound broke behind me. Clapping. Not loud, not triumphant. Gentle, respectful. It spread, hands coming together one by one, soft but steady. My throat tightened. I didn't turn to face them. I just closed my eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over me. Not applause for power, but for truth spoken aloud. When I opened them again, I exhaled slowly. Justice isn't loud, I murmured, almost to myself. Sometimes it's just silence and the lesson it leaves behind. The passengers grew quiet again, but the weight had shifted. For the first time since boarding, the silence wasn't heavy with fear. It was heavy with respect, and I carried it with me as I stepped forward. The lounge was almost empty. My reflection stared back at me from the dark pane of glass. The city, lights glittering faintly beyond. My body felt heavy, but it wasn't exhaustion. It was the weight of everything I hadn't said, everything I had carried for years. Behind me, I heard the soft shuffle of shoes. "Excuse me," a voice said, low but steady. I turned. It was the older passenger who had whispered encouragement during the flight. His face held no pity, only respect. "I just wanted to thank you," he said. "You didn't raise your voice. That made it louder than all of them." A tired breath escaped me. Sometimes the calmest words leave the deepest scars. He nodded, taking the seat across from me. For a moment, he just sat in silence as though giving me space to exhale. Then his voice softened. "Do you think they'll ever change?" The question stung because I'd asked it myself countless times. In boardrooms, in classrooms, in every space where my skin entered first and my title had to fight to catch up. I held his gaze. They already have. Today. He leaned back, studying me with eyes that seemed older than his years. "It's rare, what you did. Most people scream to be heard. You made silence do the screaming." I swallowed, my throat suddenly tight. I learned long ago that shouting doesn't always reach the people who need to hear it. But shame, truth, spoken without fire, just certainty, that burns forever. His lips pressed together, thoughtful. I've lived long enough to see too much hate dress itself as normal. What you gave us today, it wasn't just justice for you. It was hope for the rest of us. Hope. The word felt dangerous, fragile. I wanted to believe it, but hope had betrayed me before. Still, tonight, it didn't feel empty. "Hope only matters if it becomes action," I said quietly. "Otherwise, it's just a pretty word people use to avoid responsibility." His eyes glistened, though he blinked it away quickly. "Then let me promise you this. When I tell this story, I won't soften it. I won't let them forget what they saw today." Something inside me loosened. For so long, my battles had felt like mine alone. Yet here was a witness, a voice that could carry further than mine ever could. "That's all I ask," I whispered. "That none of us let silence protect them anymore." He reached for his bag, standing slowly. His hand lingered on the chair. "You've already changed more than you know." When he walked away, I turned back to the glass. My reflection wavered in the night, fractured by the glow of the city. I thought of every time I had been told to lower my eyes, to take the insult, to carry it quietly so I wouldn't be labeled angry, ungrateful, unworthy. Tonight I hadn't raised my voice, but I had refused to bow my head. The glass stared back at me, and for the first time, I didn't just see myself. I saw the women who came before me. I saw my grandmother's trembling hands on a broom, my mother's weary sigh after being passed, over again and again. I saw their silence, and I saw the shattering of it. I leaned closer, whispering only to the reflection. My fight isn't just mine. It never was. It's for every voice they buried before mine. Outside, the city lights blurred into constellations, and for the first time all day the silence felt like peace.